What's going on, people? We've got an exciting matchup here today because we have a newer Zerg player versus, well, the Zerg versus Zerg specialist, the man who almost upset Hit 'em Up in the last Acropolis. That's right, it's Kenoli taking on Desire. We've seen Desire in a couple of team games, but now we get to see their 1v1 chops. Kenoli, of course, in the bottom right here of Near Impact 2.0, he is our Pumpkin Zerg. And Desire is in the top left as our Vivid Red Zerg. Oh, but it was Vermilion. I almost said Vermilion, guys. I swear. But I wanted to be confident that time. I was confidently wrong. Guys, if you aren't signed up for Acropolis number 3's new stage, the very exciting Tribunal stage, then I certainly encourage you to do so. There will, of course, be a link to our Discord server in the description of this video if you're not there already. And if you want to be there and you want to sign up to this tournament, you get in there, you can check the threads inside the tournaments folder, or the tournaments channel. There you go. Very exciting times because it's a brand new section of single elimination, best of 3 into best of 5 tournament, where you'll be able to qualify directly to the battlements phase, skip all of those losers that have to go through the gauntlets. Can you believe those losers? Statistically speaking, that's most of the people who play in the tournament, but they're losers because you did not lose to them. Or they didn't play at all, in which case they definitely lost. You lose every game that you don't play. That's my thought process and philosophy. And before we get into the build orders here, because they are mirrored so far, I did also want to point out that iScript has been extended on pre-release. I highly recommend checking that out. It probably won't change anything for you, besides the fact that there's some balance adjustments as well. But if you find any issues, you can discover them and inform us of them before we go to tournament time. That would be much appreciated, homies. Looks like Desire is going to go ahead and force a big droll pull from Kenoli. This is actually quite considerable. I feel like you only needed maybe 3 max, especially as your pool is about to be done and you could have just gone for, 1 larva's worth of Rilla cores or something of the sort. But nonetheless, Desire will definitely come out ahead in terms of economy for that. Well, I say that Kenoli has 3 more workers, so I guess he could afford to do that. It has been Larvosk into pool for both players. There's Zethrakors on the side of Desire, and Quasalisks on the side of Kenoli. But it looks like Desire's about to put down another... Okay, Zorka's Shroud. All right. A different tech node for Desire, while a Kagrant closer to the ramp is what Kenoli is after. And of course, he's got his much-needed expansion coming up here, as well as his Quas moving across the map. This is a little bit dangerous, because Desire could end up seeing that these Quas are coming and then kind of wrap around. But as it stands right now, it looks like the Quas are going to start to basically clean up here. Some statter stepping here from Kenoli might end up being what is necessary. He's actually going to be cowed all the way back to his main base. It feels like he could have just stood and taken that fight, especially as some of those Zethrakors got a little bit async. But this is going to give Desire a little bit of info, right? You'll see that expansion was indeed coming up. And of course, it also makes Kenoli poop his pants a little bit. And when you can make your opponent poop their pants, I highly recommend doing it. It's just very distracting for the rest of the game. They might call it a pause and then be denied the pause for too long, because cleaning up poop from your pants is way too long. So I really highly recommend doing that whenever possible, if it's somehow within your power. The Zorka Shroud is within Desire's power. It is going to indeed be used to make some Lakizalisks, and it looks like... I thought this was going to be a Larvos, the resources were there for it. Instead, it's a Circuith, which feels like a little bit of a panic. There was a bunch of larva earmarked for Quasalisks this whole time, so I don't know that there needed to be a panic. But nonetheless, Kenoli could theoretically muscle you down with a pure Quas army. So it makes sense to at least try something to avert that. Had Kenoli just pulled the trigger to attack immediately, that would potentially be, indeed, a very scary sight. So I can kind of understand Desire's thought process so far. A couple Lakes are out, and they can go ahead and watch for these interfering Quasalisks. It does feel like with 3 of them out, especially, there's like no hope here for the Quas alone to be able to get this done. And this is one of the things that I think is important in all RTS games, but especially in Cosmo, is figuring out where your composition is deficient and adding around that. So Kenoli, statistically speaking, is going to have more Quas than Desire based on how the early game went. So Desire goes for something that will push those Quas back. And even this is overstepping the bounds. You can see he's actually... he almost had both of those first 2 Lakes. The problem is that obviously when the unit standing on top of the burrowed unit dies, it no longer has vision. So that was a fateful kill. But an Ovaleth is already here to prevent this from being lethal. as the counter push comes in. And Kenoli's been drolling very respectably so far, has gone into quads only after it seemed obvious that their, not really a containment, but their forward push would end up being destroyed and broken. Behind this, though, it must be said, Desire could be facing a player, if Kenoli wanted to. Kenoli could basically just have made a bunch of Zethra cores and waypointed them to 12 o'clock or something. And unfortunately for Desire, they're losing a couple of these very important quads. Every unit is precious right now for Desire, it feels like, since they're down so many workers. And of course, their expansion is only halfway complete on the gestation. So far, Kenoli definitely leading. Economically speaking, militarily speaking. Desire is sending more and more units over, though. Any tech from Kenoli? Hydra's then only now coming up, so this push could be a little bit deadly. He's going to need a couple of extra static defense structures, it feels like, and it looks like he agrees. Zavalev being attempted to be shooed away by those claws, but yeah, you can't step too close. Right now, that's a little bit of a Mexican standoff. Who's going to pull the trigger first? Do people still say Mexican standoff? I remember Canadian standoff was when two Canadians are holding the door for each other, and they're not sure who's going to start walking through first, That or they're both saying sorry. Who can say sorry first? I think Rainaril will hit him up in that, but that's just a rough idea. So we've got Triple Circuit at the front. It's a pretty far back, pretty defensive line there, but you don't need a lot of build space as Zerg, generally speaking. You can probably fill out the main with all the hatches you need, so not really a huge deal. And remember that Avaleth is still there, but it's actually been shooed away from this upper area, so Desire's going to try to push in for the kill. Kenoli's got so much money in the bank right now, makes 12 Hydras, goes for the ski back, but it looks like his front might actually get broken. I don't know how he's going to possibly deal with all of these Lakes. At the very least, he has that back circuit, but this is a very chaotic, bloody fight. It does look like most of the quads are going to get cleaned up at the very least, but there's still 4 Lakes running roughshod over this position. The Hydras are going to come in to clean up, but a lot of workers ended up going down, and Desire somehow takes the economic lead off the back of that. Well, not somehow. We know how. Through the Lakes. Now, this Hatrosk needs to be safeguarded, and Kenoli absolutely can make it happen with 8 Hydras of his own, but he's actually allowing it to take a little bit more damage, and this feels like a missed opportunity, right? He absolutely could come down here and kill these Lakes, kill the Quaz, and then retake that position, make it a little bit harder for Kenoli to end up falling later on in the game if Desire continues to push on forward. As of right now, we've got more production coming. We've got Bactals being made as Izira cores are leveraging the mineral count. And, this army is definitely going to deal with whatever it is that Desire is fomenting. Right now, it looks like a lot of Quaz and only 2 Lakes. 2 more are on the way. Yeah, these Hydras are going to clean this up easily. He might get 1 kill. Oh, he actually gets a 3rd one because of or a 2nd one because of that one. But now the backs are out. Yeah, the Lakes ends up giving him 1 extra frag there, but that was a little bit too much, I feel like. Speaking of saying frag, obviously that's just my Counter-Strike nomenclature coming into the Cosmocasts, because I've been doing Counter-Strike commentary recently. But it's worth pointing out that there was that one mod, I think it was Dawn of Change, before it turned into Burning Ground because of some hard drive failure. Shout out to Black Overseer one time, even though he's a goober. But he's a cool goober, Maybe not, I can't remember, honestly. It's been so long. Anyway, I neither condone nor, I forget what the other term is, decry. I neither condone nor decry. But I will say Black Overseer did make a mod where he replaced the kills string with frags. And that just felt very characteristic, That's like a cool little emblematic lingo there. Now, we were going to say kills, but, frags is pretty cool. All right, we do have a decent amount of production here for Desire. Now he's going for the Khazitrith. It's going to be a lot harder for Kenoli to be able to break through unless these Lakes get picked apart by Bactalisks. Obviously, they have similar range, identical range, but I think with the Bactalisks, you can definitely pick your fights a lot more because they are mobile, right? So he's going to try to focus one down, and he can really fight just one at a time from his position. That's going to force Kenoli to, or force Desire a little bit further back while Kenoli starts to cap his gas. I've noticed a lot of mineral floating, but I mean, am I surprised when it comes to Kenoli? That is his trademark move. Float a bunch of money and still win. We'll see if he ends up doing just that. He's got a lot of workers back at home. Meanwhile, we have the beautiful Khazitrith emplacement here. Really hard for Kenoli to break this one. And we do have 2 Gorgor cores being made. Do I smell some kind of air breakout? Even if you just, we've seen the players, basically, this is like the equivalent of League of Legends ARAM, Everybody just goes straight down the middle of the map. Nobody leverages the flanking positions or pockets some units to backstab in after. No, it's just Let me throw my army at your choke. You fail. Let me throw my army at your choke. Okay, yeah, let's see what happens. And so far, it does look like Desire is going to be able to hold on. But there is a little bit of hemorrhaging of some of those tech units here for Desire. You can see him constantly having to cycle back with his Lakes. The Azira cores are kind of expendable units there. But even the Quas, I mean, those do require minerals for Desire, and the money is dead even in terms of the worker count. We've got more Gorger cores on the way. None of it left the building yet. The Ovaleth is potentially snipeable here by anything that Desire can field. But right now, it doesn't look like that's the main focus. You can see the Bactylisks were trained directly on top of the Lakes, but the Zoryus are on top, speeding everything else up, including the Gorger cores. God damn, they're scary, especially when they're fast. And it looks like the Gorger cores are going to munch on this army. You needed a lot of Hydras behind this to be safe against that particular move. And, you know, I know the Ovalith was here for anti-linkage, but it does feel like Kenoli could have pivoted in to check the eggs at any time. When you have detection, you can actually see what units are being made out of the eggs. You can actually read basically like what we're reading with the unit icon and the production bar. So this actually looks a lot worse now for Kenoli. He barely has much of an army. What is that, 9 Hydras? He's trying to do his best to produce a couple more units, but he's lost everything on the retreat, and he has hardly any static defense. So he's really going to have to mount the defense of all defenses. Maybe he can get a couple of quick picks here. That definitely helps out. Getting some of the Zoryus cleaned out before they can really do too much else, and kind of keeping the army out of sync with itself. The focus comes in. 1 Gorger core falls. We got more Hydras hatching, 7 more in production. It does look like maybe they'll be able to deal with the Quas. Yeah, this is a really nice spread from Kenoli. Feels like maybe, just maybe, he might be able to get out of here alive. His Ovaleth did go down. He's going to need a new one. Decent amount of cash for him. But the Gorger cores are now coming in to swoop after his workers. The Ovaleth went back to the main base, or maybe this is one from a while ago. The Burrow comes in pretty late, and Kenoli has lost 8 workers already. Meanwhile, the push comes in with Zethricor's Quas and, of course, those 2 Lakes. Kenoli's not out of this just yet, but he does need to get back to mining in his main base, and he needs to safeguard his workers. He's pulling them into harm's way, into the Lakes' line of fire, but somehow none of them end up going down. I don't know how that happened. The Hydras tripping over themselves. The Zeth's trying to munch on him. Looks like a couple more Hydras will end up going down, but that's a wrap for this attack at the end of the day. Still, economically speaking, even though there's a big bank here for Kenoli, he doesn't have the larva necessary to reestablish his worker count on any one base, so he's going to be down to 1 base, actually. A bloody game between these players. Desire keeping a bunch of units at home. He's going to come in for another munch. Those Hydras were stacked up real nice, but unfortunately for Desire, it is not to be. Yeah, it feels like right now, I mean, Kenoli is definitely finding it difficult to stay alive, stay on the board, but it does feel like there's still room for him to do that. He's got double Spraith in the natural, double Spraith in the main. They're very deceptively powerful defensive structures, even versus Gorger cores. It's just that obviously the Drolets can still die if they're burrowed near them, right? Because the splash damage from the attack speed here. By the way, I believe this is... I'm pretty sure this attack speed is the same as before. So this is like the pre-nerf Gorg in terms of its attack speed. Yeah, it is, because their calcification here got dropped to 6 damage instead of 8. So here's the Unburrow. Gonna certainly make Desire think twice about pushing forward, but all these Hydras are stacked up. Desire pounces on the opportunity. A Zorka Shroud, but no other combat units being made. Kenoli is in real tough stuff right now. Under the pump, indeed. The Gorgs are mostly dead, but there's nothing to control the Quas, and the workers have to hightail it out of there. Still, Kenoli is actually maintaining eco-parity with his opponent, but he's not mining from his natural. He's gonna call GG. And in a pretty tight game there, Desire will actually take the game. Smarty Cakes watches on. You love to see it because, of course, that means he got to see... I mean, I think at this point the beef is quashed and Smarty and Kenoli are good friends. But remember, Kenoli knocked Smarty out 3-0 in the last chance to qualify to the Battlement stage for Acropolis number 2. So, you know, it must be a little bit satisfying to see an upstart player get him good, even on his best matchup, statistically speaking. So thanks for joining us for this cast for Cosmonarchy. We'll be back tomorrow for more of these. So subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And remember, our tournament is open to all. You just have to be good enough to qualify. So sign up via our Discord server. If you're not sure where, ask around. GG's. We'll see you tomorrow.